The last session we discussed about working with how do we deal with the switch statements. That means how we can use ng switch directive. A simple example I given how to deal with the switch directive, and that is the directive. Yes. Yeah, how to use the switch case and handle the switch case. A simple example. So when you have a lot of blocks of interface, blocks of content to display, then using the then blocks will be a difficult task, because it will take much time for creating an explicit template and rendering them. We can go with the switch. So we can use the switch case. So switch, and yesterday I showed you a simple example of one more extra work is how we can handle event arguments. One basic example, just like JavaScript. In JavaScript, actually event arguments are handled by using this end event. Here we don't have this. Only $event can handle the all event arguments and object related properties also. So if you want to access object related properties through that event argument, so you have to use target property. Target contains object related properties, and event related properties you can directly access with reference of properties like client X, client Y, key up, key code, character code. All these can be accessed by using this just like how you do in your JavaScript. So this is one structural directive. So that is how we can use the switch, how we can use switch option. Next, after understanding how ng switch works and how it is designed, another structural directive you need to know is about ng for. So the structural directives ng if, ng switch, and ng for. Actually, generally for means we call as iterator, but here technically we are using these in UI, user interface. Technically ng for, so ng for is an repeater. It is an repeater actually. ng for is an repeater. The main intention of ng for is nothing but it is used to repeat any HTML element dynamically. Repeater, it is a repeater. It repeats HTML element dynamically by using an iterator actually. So it is a repeater that uses an iterator. That means it requires iterator over collection, iterator over values in a collection. So generally we are using this in the user interface. When we are using this in the user interface, then it works as an repeater actually, repeater. But for repeating, it uses an iterator. Iterator is nothing but it uses two iterators are there. You know that. Generally in TypeScript, what are the two iterators we have? So two iterators we have for in and for off. Two iterators are there. For in, it iterates over properties. Iterates over properties. And for off, it iterates over values. It iterates over values. So these iterators are responsible for iterating over properties and iterating over values. Now, generally, from a collection, we need to read the values. So ng for uses, uses off operator. By using the off operator, it can repeat. So it is a repeater actually, repeater. Repeater means, for example, suppose I have a list item. I have a list item. I want this list item to repeat. So I want list item to repeat. So list item is present in order list. I want this item to repeat. Repeat how many times? Suppose we have an array. Suppose we have an array. So some collection is there. In the collection, so some values are there. A, so B and C like this. So values are defined. Now I want this list item to repeat and display for every element inside the collection. In the collection. So we want this item to repeat. So then in this list item, we use ng for. Ng for repeats the current element. Repeats the current element. How many times it should repeat and for which element it should repeat. That is decided by using iterator. Iterator tells how many times to repeat and for what value it has to repeat. That means here we have to write, so we have to define simply, we need to define let item of collection. We have to write this. Just like how you write a for off statement. So that means it will repeat only when there are items in collection. And it will repeat for every item inside the collection. Every item inside the collection. Remember, it will repeat list item. Only the point is, if you want to read the value returned by this collection, you can read and use that value. That means item contains the first item. Then you can access that and you can display that first item here. Even if you don't use it, it doesn't matter. Why? Because this list item will repeat. It will repeat for every item inside the collection. That means it will repeat 3 times. Whether you use the value or not, it doesn't matter for it. It is just a repeater. So we additionally use the values also. Technically, we use the values also. Let's see one simple example, how it works, how you configure that. So it is why it is called as a repeater, right? It is a repeater that uses iterator. So let's create a simple component. Let's add a component here. So ng generate component for demo, right? Yes. So generally in this component, Let's create one simple example for that, right? Yeah, we generated the component for demo. So let's add that for demo. For demo, yeah, in the index also for demo. Okay. So it's in the startup now. It is in the startup here. Okay. Let's start with that. Okay. And let it start. I will go into this for demo TS file. Okay. In this for demo TS file, I will just add some collection. I will add some basic collection here. So I'm adding like some nav items is equal to, it's an array. So it is having options like all, it is having options like home. So like some electronics like this. Traditionally here as per the TS lint rules, it is defined with this. But actually, if you are using older versions of Angular, Angular 10, 9 and all, in those versions, generally TS lint is enabled. In Angular 11, TS lint is disabled. TS lint allows you to use single quote, double quotes. It will not show any warning. In other versions, TS lint is enabled, which will ask you to use string in single quote only, because that is the default rule set. You can change it. Here, TS lint is disabled, suppressed. So you don't need to worry about spaces, line breaks and all. So earlier versions will give you a lot of warnings. So based on the rules of TS lint defined actually. So TS lint is the language analysis tool. Here TS lint disables a lot of the rules that previously it was using in older versions. Due to that, now developer can write a single quote, double quote, anything. But it is good to maintain a consistency. That is the reason. How to set the rules in TS lint we will see in the next coming session. We will discuss about that. Then there will be consistent coding, so that everybody will use the same approach for a project actually. So here let's create one array. It is nav items. So home, electronics, so footwear. Okay, like this. Now I want this collection. We have this collection. I want this collection inside this now. So I will create here. So container fluid. Okay. So just temporarily, I will just give here div class as row. That is a bootstrap class. And here we have just div class as call. So call some 3 columns I am defining here. Okay. We can add several columns and display. So initially, I want to generate a simple some navigation bar, like just a simple option here. So we need to design a simple navigation bar like. So I will just give here call to, and here I will put a heading some nav bar, just roughly. And under this, I need to generate an unordered list. So unordered list item. So I want this list item to repeat. So let's run this and see. Initially, I started that application. So localhost, and you can see only one unordered list. So is there one list item is there. Now what I want to do here is I want this list item to repeat for every item inside the collection. Then we need a repeater, and the repeater is ng for. ng for. ng for uses an iterator. So let item of collection now items. That means now you can observe that I'm just using an iterator. So for a collection, so how many items are there in that collection? So those number of times this list item will repeat. And you can see that that list item is repeated 4 times. That we are not using the collection values. We are just using a repeater. So just to tell you that it is a repeater, it is not iterator. ng for is technically is not a direct iterator. It is a repeater which uses an iterator. So that means if anyone asks, so why we use ng for? It is a structural directive, remember that. You cannot say that it is an iterator because generally many people say that ng for is an iterator. ng for is not iterator, for is iterator. So ng for is a repeater because it is a structural directive which affects the structure of HTML DOM element by repeating it. So it is not technically iterator, it uses an iterator. So it is a repeater. So it repeats any element based on iterations. So additionally what we do is, so while repeating, we created a variable which captures the value of every value of this collection. Now this can be used here in the list item. In the list item, I can use that item. And you can see that it will access those items and it can display those items here. That looks very simple. Very simple. If you know JavaScript, jQuery, this is a very lengthy process. Earlier, if you know JavaScript and jQuery, JavaScript is too lengthy. jQuery also little bit. Actually, if you know JavaScript and jQuery, how to create a list item in an ordered list. Suppose you are using jQuery. Suppose first I will show here, if you are using JavaScript. In JavaScript, we have a collection. So now items, and it is having some collection. So generally what we do is where item of now items. Inside this iterator, so what we have to do is, first we have to create li document dot create element list item. After that, this li list item dot inner HTML, it should display that item. After that, so document dot get element by id, that ordered list id we have to access. Ordered list or unordered list id you have to access. Dot append child, we have to add the list item. This is how generally we do in JavaScript. Suppose you are using jQuery. jQuery will little bit reduce that logic. In jQuery, generally we use $each. And here we have a collection, now items. It uses a callback function. So with key and value as a callback function. And in this callback function, what we have to do is, so we have to create a list item. So we have to create a list item. This list item will contain the value. It will contain the value. Close the list item and end it. Okay, and append to ordered list. Like this, we have to write if it is jQuery. So if you have to do the same work in JavaScript and jQuery, generally we have to do in this way. I hope everybody knows this. If I have to handle through if I have to handle through a collection, I have to handle through a collection, so of nested collections, then it becomes more difficult. So a lot of logic I need to write. Now this entire, in Angular, we simply use a simple statement ng for let item of collection. That's it. This one line handles everything now. So we need to access that item and use the item in our. That is one advantage how it repeats this. And you can see that. So you can repeat and display. For example, I want this as a link. I want this as a link. That means I'm just using an anchor. So anchor href is equal to href. Initially I said hash, and it is using that item here. That means it is using them as links. These are the links here. We are generating a list right now. For example, this is not just only a simple option here. So it is not just a simple option here. We can use any. For example, this is one option. Suppose I am creating another column here. So this is one column. I will add another column. So another column. So and this is so class, right? So class, another call to. Okay. Suppose I am using some heading again, some nav menu. Suppose I am creating a drop down here. In this drop down, I need to generate options. In the drop down, I need to generate options. Then how you generate an option inside the drop down? Usually how you can configure that. So simple. So we need an option. This option should repeat. That means in order to use this, you need to be very strong in your HTML. Why? Because in HTML, first you should know how it structures the component. Based on that, where to use ng for is decided. So that means if you're not strong in HTML and you misplace this ng for, then the output will be abnormal. It will not be accordingly. So you will see that in certain occasions here. Suppose here, I want this option to repeat. So I will use this class as form control. That is a bootstrap class. So you can see there is a drop down here. I want this to repeat, options to repeat. Then simple, we have to write for the option. ng for. So it should repeat. So ng for let item of collection, nav items. So option will repeat. Now in that I need to display the item. So that's it. We can display the item. You can see it is going to display them as options here. Now, so we have limitations for HTML elements. For examples, when I am creating such drop down, sometimes people ask, like, in a drop down, I want those icons, electronics icon, footwear icon, home icon, symbols. If anybody who knows HTML, he knows that he cannot put icons or symbols inside options 100%. We have to design through Bootstrap. Through Bootstrap, we have to design a drop down. That drop down can have icons. Or now in Angular, we can use Angular material, which will provide such facilities, which we will see in the next level, how to use Angular materials. This is just on HTML. So currently I am showing you this iteration happening on list items, on a drop down, it is repeating that. It can be even a table, so it can be any content configuration, right? It can handle anything here, so it can define anything here. That means it can even use, for example, suppose say I am adding another column. So I'm showing on different elements how it manages. So call to again. Okay. Here I am adding some heading. So something like now table. So I want a table to be generated here. So I am using a table. So table have just class table and table hover. Okay. In the table we have T body. Later with complex data also we will see. Initially, basically we have a table row. Now we want this row to repeat. We want this row to repeat. And in that case, then we remember, so you cannot repeat table cell. If you repeat table cell, all items will be added in cells. So we need to repeat the row because every item I want in a row. Then you need to repeat the row. Then here we have to use ng for and let item of collection now items, and that item is added into the cell. Into the cell we need to add the item. And you know, if you don't add a cell and you directly add anything, what affects the structure? What affects the structure? You know that. We need to follow that. We need to follow. So here you can see, so it is a table now. It is a table with some rows. So we have a drop down. So we have a ordered list. We have a table. All these are generated just so by using this. Many times, so we have presentations in several ways, as I already told you. For example, suppose you want to create a list box, then same. Suppose I am creating here, so div. So, and the class as again called to, okay. And here I defined a heading as suppose now list. So, and here I am creating a select and I am using a class as form control. And here we are designing an option. And this becomes a drop down. But you know that for select, if I can give the size attribute as 3, and this option should repeat. So that means ng for, so let item of collection. Collection is now items, and that item will be displayed there. And you can see that it gets a list box for you. In the list box, it is going to generate those options and display. So we have a just list items, we have just like drop down, we have like a table, we have like now list. But in real world requirements, a lot of additional options are asked, which generally we achieve by using, technically we achieve that by using our CSS knowledge. So with the help of CSS, we can achieve such things. For example, sometimes it is asked like, I want a checked list box. Checked list box means I want a checkboxes list. And 100% you know that there is no checkboxes list in HTML. You don't have any checkbox list in HTML. Then how we can create the checkboxes list? How we can configure the checkboxes list? Define the checkboxes list. So we can't have a checkbox list actually. So then what we do is we have to design ourselves by using the knowledge of Bootstrap, CSS and all. For example, suppose here, if anyone wants a checkbox list. So what we are doing now is let's create another div. So that is why we say you need a good knowledge of CSS and HTML to have a good presentation, bootstrap and all. And here I want a checklist, and how to create a checklist. So there is no HTML element for that actually. We don't have any HTML element for checklist. Then what we do is, so we create a div here. So we create a div here. We create a div. And this div is having a class called some checklist. Okay. Checklist is the class for the div. I just give a class. This is our own class. Okay. In this div, we are adding another div. Okay. This div have to repeat. Then I will use ng for let item of collection nav items, and it should repeat. It should repeat for every element here. That means I am using an item. I am using an item here. Okay. This div have to repeat with a checkbox. Input type is equal to checkbox. And the item will be used as checkbox text. It will be used as the checkbox text. So that is the checkbox. That is the checkbox text. This is the checkbox text beside it. So, and this item should be used as checkbox value. You can. So what you have to do is for the value property. So value property, you can attach that item. You can attach that item. That means whenever the checkbox is submitted, that value will be taken for it. And observe carefully. So this is an ordinary div here. You can see this is an ordinary div. You can see this is an ordinary div. This is an ordinary div with checkboxes here. With the checkboxes here. I want a checked list box like this. We don't have that. In HTML, we don't have that. So in HTML, we don't have any checked list box. Then usually what we do is, so now we can go into this. That means we can go to its CSS. I created a class for the div which contains that nav items. So checklist. So let's go to the CSS here. In the CSS, I am adding here. So the class checklist. And what effects you can give to make it like the list box. I will give height of that div as some 90 pixel height, and padding I will give as some 10 pixel, and I will give here. So when I give 90 pixel and 10 pixel, so height and all for the checklist, you can see that it will be normal. You will not see any difference for that. That means checklist, this is the checklist class, and I am defining the checklist class here. And in the checklist class, so we are configuring, this class is configured with some attributes. So attribute is nothing but height 90 pixel, padding 10 pixel. And important is, you can see here, so this doesn't have any difference there for that. Actually, we have to use, suppose I am using border temporarily to show you. Border is 2 pixel solid border is defined for that. That means usually we are adding a border. You see, border is up to this because the height is defined up to that. So generally what we can do is we can just see some content is outside. Then we can simply put overflow as auto. If I keep overflow as auto, actually overflow is set to scroll bar, but it will get a horizontal scroll bar, vertical scroll bar. I don't want that. I will put auto because it will get only the scroll bar which is necessary for the situation. Is it vertical requirement? A vertical scroll bar will come. Horizontal scroll bar will come. And you can see when I set auto, then you can see a vertical scroll bar will come. This is a checkered list box. Is a checkered list box. That means, so you don't have any checkered list box like things. We don't have any checkered list box like things. This is a list box. Officially, this is designed with select. With select, you cannot create a checked list box. Options cannot be checkboxes. Options can be only plain text content. They cannot be checkboxes. They cannot be radios. So everything we have to design with our CSS and other knowledge we have to design. So that is the reason when you go as an developer with Angular, many times your real world requirements will be in such a way that, so you will be thinking like how to design this in Angular. So because that is not there in HTML. But if you know Bootstrap, CSS and all these perfectly, that is simple. That is nothing complex. You can design such things because for that we don't have any ready-made components also. Some components are readily available, which you can use. That I will show you. We call that Angular materials. By using Angular materials, we can design our own we can use some ready-made components. But some we have to design ourselves with all the knowledge of CSS and everything. Right? So this is general. That means it will look like other elements. It will look like other elements. So that means suppose you can give a lot of options for that. So suppose here border is suppose blue. So I given the border color as blue color. So border color as blue or just a blue shade I defined for that. So border as blue, a blue shade is defined for this. And it gets me that border shade and display that border here. On hover, I can make it shadow. That means I can just keep here dot checklist hover. On checklist hover, I can put as a box shadow. So 2 pixel, 3 pixel, 4 pixel, some this color. So shadow, I can keep that. That color shadow. So this makes when mouse pointer is over, it can put that shadow. These all effects we can add and define according to our requirements. Right? That is all your CSS presentation, how you manage that. So this is a simple iteration with simple ng for how to handle it. Now the iterations can be nested. So currently we are using all this with a simple if for and iteration and accessing them. Sometimes the data that you have is complex, then you need nested iterations. That means how we can manage the nested iterations, how we can define the nested iterations. So that means generally within the for another for, how to configure it. Now in JavaScript and jQuery, it becomes too complicated to create nested is. Very lengthy logic you have to write. That means if the items contain a complex collection, then performing iterations over them will be very complicated for us. So let's see the option, how we can handle that, how we can use it, how to configure and how do we define that. For example, suppose this is simple. Let's go into some complex things. So let's go into some complex. So that means complex means I will just keep this nav bar and all this. Let's remove these options, nav table and all. Yeah. And here, so let's keep that. Okay. Now in this, we have a complex collection. For example, suppose I am having same now items. So this time it is an array of objects. It is an array of objects. And in this array of objects, so we are having the collection. So every object contains a category. The category is some electronics. So electronics. Under this category, we have a collection products. In the products, we have again a collection. So that is like some JBL, some speaker. So, and I said some earpods, something like this. And another, so we have a category. So another we have category. And the category is having like footwear. So we have products. So we have products. Products is an array inside it. That means we have a complex collection this time. That's how generally we have some Nike casuals like this. Some option like here, some Lee Cooper boots. Okay. Okay, this is a simple collection we are defining. So a category and some fashion and some products. So products, oh, yeah, products and the products collection. Yeah, and it is having like some shirt, some jeans, something. Okay. Now I want this to generate as a menu. Now in this, you have a category. Under that category, we need products. So this is where you need to be very strong in HTML, how to create nested things. For example, see now, I want to create an ordered list. So I will create an ordered list or unordered list. I am defining UL, unordered list. I need to generate a list item. Then a list item should repeat. So here we are using, so ng for, okay. This list item should repeat. This list item should repeat for every item. So let item, and item of now items. Okay. But this item this time is not an ordinary one. It's not an ordinary one. This item, currently this item is now, every item is referring to an object. In that object, we have two properties, category and products. Now here, the item is an object now. So if you just put an item, you can see that it is going to generate an object here. It is an object. Item is an object. Now usually, I want this item object. I will just use column 3. Okay. I want this item object to access the category and print the category. Item have a category property, and you can see all the categories are printed here. All the categories are printed. Now under that category, you have some products inside it. Under that category, you have some products. We need to perform iteration over the products. That means, so of course, I defined this. Suppose under that I want products. Under that I want products. In that case, so how to generate a nested list? You need to know in HTML. We create a nested list inside it. Inside the list item, under that name, you create another unordered list. This unordered list contains a list item. This list item should repeat again. That means we use ng for again. ng for. And here we have to define let. In the nested list, you cannot use the same reference name again. I will just use product, another reference called product of now items. So you see here, this time, remember, item is having category property and item is having products property, which is an array. That means inside this list item, we need to perform iteration over products. That means here we have to define item dot products. That means we are performing iteration on the products in that nav items. That means every item have a category, we are printing it. Every item have products. For that again we are creating an iteration. And this iteration, so we'll get the product name and I need to print that product here. I need to print the product here. This makes the iterations nested and it will get you like this. It will get you like this and display. That means it is creating, so it is creating the categories, under the categories these items. So these are the categories, under the categories these items. We need to configure that. Now if anybody asks like, okay, how you generate this in a drop down? In a drop down, is there any ability that I can put a group? So that means I can give a, generally, you know, if you are dealing with a drop down, how you will display nested list in a drop down. Obviously, if you know HTML, in HTML, you know that select have an OPT group, and select have an option. So that is the reason you need to be very strong in your HTML and you should know every element that is required for rendering the structure. So that makes the presentation perfect. So, and you can achieve what you are looking for actually. So if you say that I don't know what is this OPT group in select, that means you need to be strong in HTML. You cannot simply present anything as per the requirements without properly knowing the structure. So OPT group, you know, generally how we write OPT group, I will show here. So I am creating a select. Okay, select is having a class as form control. Okay, in this selector, we have to first generate an OPT group, option group. We have to first generate an option group. So inside the option group, we will have options actually. This option group should be generated for category. That means we have to repeat ng for. So let item of nav items. Okay. And here I need to print. Generally, you cannot directly print anything inside option group because option group don't display any text inside. If you know HTML, option group usually uses an attribute called label. Option group uses label. In the label, we need to display. In the label, we need to display item dot. So label is a property. That means how you write the label property that you depend. That means you see here, we are writing label property. In the label property, we are configuring here. We are writing here item dot category. Category will be used as label. That means first you should know that OPT group is there in select. And next you should know that how OPT group will present its text. It presents its text by using label. And inside the OPT group, you will have option. Inside the option group, you will have option. And this option should repeat ng for let product of so item dot products. And here I need to display the option value. Option value will be displayed here. That is product will be displayed here. This is how we generate. This is not Angular. This is your good HTML. If you're not great in HTML, you can't achieve this. Because many people, even they are experienced people and they don't know complete abilities of HTML attributes and options. They come with this question like, sir, how to design this? They asked us to do this. That means you need to be strong in your CSS and HTML for structurally controlling, because these are all structural directives. The directive is same everywhere, only structure wise presentation is important for you. And you can see that this is going to achieve like this. That means you can see the option groups will come like this now. So electronics is an OPT group. So, and under that group we have these two. And footwear is another group. Under that group we have these two. Fashion is another group. It will have these two. That is how we generate everything in HTML. So we cannot simply do that. So without knowledge of this HTML and its structure. Because where you keep it, how you keep it, everything matters. Sometimes if you misplace any particular element, so structurally it is not correct in HTML, then automatically you will see an abnormal presentation. You will not see exactly what you are actually looking for. That is the general thing you will feel. So you can create in several ways. For example, this is one. Suppose I am creating another column here. So I'm creating another div here. Suppose I say call class is equal to call3, another. And here I'm just adding like nav collapse like navigation I want to create. And I want to create a collapse like navigation. Collapse like navigation means you can see I can create a div. So this div should repeat. So that means ng for, so let, so item of nav items. And in this, I am creating an HTML element called details. You know, HTML have a details element. Details element is having summary. In the summary, I am displaying item.category. Item.category is displayed in the summary. And details under the summary, it can have unordered list. So unordered list can have list item. So in this list item should be repeated for products. That means, so ng for, so let product of now item dot products. And I want to print the product here. I want to print the product here. Now, if you know in HTML what is details and summary, then you can see that the presentation happens like this. This is the details and summary in HTML. That is details and summary in HTML. And I added this product. So added this product as an anchor. So as an anchor, href is equal to hash. Then it will get me that presentation and display. And I can expand this. You can see those nav items are displayed there. So this is complete your HTML. So how you can create the nested iterations and configure. So ng for is a repeater. So you have nested options, nested iterations, how to manage them. There are more complex things. Suppose you are having data table and how you can present data table in a tabular form. So field names, columns and all, how you can arrange them. And ng for is having a lot of attributes. ng for is provided with a lot of properties. It is having a lot of properties. Like we have index, we have like first, we have like last, we have like so even, we have like odd. These are the properties, like track by. So these are the properties. These are the properties of ng for. By using these properties, we can handle more interactions with this ng for. You have just seen a basic ng for, how you can write ng for, how you can handle iterations nested. ng for is provided with a lot of attributes. These attributes will make this ng for to use in a more better way in different situations. Where we need index, where we need first, last, even, odd, track by like options, what is the necessity for them? We need to understand that. So how to deal with ng for dynamically, generating the items, removing the items through ng for. That we will see in our next session, right? Tomorrow we will continue with the properties of ng for and several examples dynamically designing interactions with ng for, right? Tomorrow we will continue with this. Yes, Naveen, you have any doubt?
Sir, actually, you said you have one software to share our screen to communicate with you, right?
Any Daska.
Any desk?
Uh,
Okay, sir. Thank you.